Hello, good evening and welcome to the news on NTAi International. We are broadcasting live from Abuja. This news can be viewed on our various social media platforms displayed on the screen. I am Nolin Ebel Ame and my sign language interpreter is Tayo Ozoma. Now a quick check at the headlines. Nigeria's fourth quarter GDP grew by 3.4% in 2023 as service sector shows strength. Federal government implements substantial parts of agreement with organized labor, urges workers to shelve proposed protests. Plus, ECOWAS moves to consolidate economic, social and cultural cooperation among member states. We begin the bulletin by telling you that President Bola Tinubu has reaffirmed his commitment as the chairman of the authority of ECOWAS heads of state and government to advancing judicial reforms with determined support, emphasizing that intriguers and accountable judicial systems will strengthen democracy across West Africa. The president said this when he received a delegation from the ECOWAS Judicial Council, led by Chief Justice of Nigeria and Chairman of the Council, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, at the State House in Abuja. President Tinubu emphasized that his administration is committed to transformative democracy because he believes the judiciary can protect democracy. The president, who expressed support for the council, congratulated judges from member states who participated in the two-day council meeting in Abuja, applauding the successful conclusion of their deliberations. He assured them that their recommendations will receive utmost consideration by the heads of state and government of ECOWAS. Chairman of the ECOWAS Judicial Council, Justice Ariwola, emphasized the Council's commitment to facilitating the effective functioning of the ECOWAS judicial system. He said the Council, at the end of its meeting in Abuja, agreed to establish two subcommittees to address pertinent judiciary-related issues in the region.
Judgments of the community court is going to be looked into. We've set up two committees, one to look into the rules and the other to look into the position or the status of the enforcement of judgments of the community court. And as I told Mr. President, by the time the council concludes its meeting, the recommendations will show that we have worked so hard to support the commission.
Still staying with the ECOWAS, a document to guide ECOWAS Commission on policy implementation regarding economic, social and cultural cooperation in the sub-region is being validated at a stakeholders consultative forum in Abuja. Kelvin Hunoye reports that the forum also had inputs from civil society organizations.
Drawing from the blueprints of the United Nations, European Union and African Union, the ECOWAS heads of state and government adopted the takeoff of the ECOSOC. This meeting, in conjunction with relevant civil societies operating in the sub-region, is to draft a working document for the unit. It will also spell out budgetary procedure, headship, research and collaborative plans with similar organizations worldwide. But at the center of the operationalization process is the role of women and youth in cultural and economic cooperation within the sub-region.
The states cannot do it alone. The private sector is very key, in not only giving employment, providing employment, but also creating the necessary conditions for individuals to, bring out their agency, in it. And that is what we need.
The document to emerge from this engagement is expected to be presented to the ECOWAS Mediation, Peace and Security Council in June this year for ratification. In Abuja, Kelvin Ewonwaye, NTAi News.
In other news, the National Bureau of Statistics released figures indicating that the country's gross domestic product, GDP, grew by 3.46% year-on-year in real terms in the fourth quarter of 2023. The growth rate is lower than the 2.54% higher than the third quarter of 2023 growth. The performance of the GDP in the fourth quarter of 2023 was driven mainly by the services sector, which recorded a growth of 3.98% and contributed 56.55% to the aggregate GDP. The agriculture sector grew by 2.10% from the growth of 2.05% recorded in the fourth quarter of 2022. The growth of the industry sector was 3.86%, an improvement from minus 0.94% recorded in the fourth quarter of 2022. In terms of share of the GDP, industry and the services sectors contributed more to the aggregate GDP in the fourth quarter of 2023 compared to the fourth quarter of 2022. On an annual basis, GDP grew by 2.74% in 2023, relative to 3.10% in 2022. Elsewhere, Egypt is targeting to raise $6.5 billion this year from the sale of its state-owned enterprises, according to the country's finance minister. The ongoing privatization program is part of plans to attract more investors and solve the country's worsening economic crisis.
Egyptian government is speeding up its privatization program as it seeks to tackle an acute shortage of hard currency. The influx of foreign exchange is needed to help import basic necessities such as food and energy, rebuild the dwindling foreign currency reserves, and support the weakening Egyptian pound that has lost over 90% of its value in the last year and a half. About 50 institutions have been enlisted in the IPO program, including state-owned banks, hotels, fuel stations, chemical companies, and renewable energy projects.
We will give a bigger share of the economy to the private sector to strengthen local manufacturing and exports. This is being done through partnerships with the private sector in state-owned entities. The target is to rake in $10 billion each year for the next 4 years, with a total of $40 billion raised during the period.
Although the government had offered various incentives such as tax breaks to attract investors, the privatization has not gone to plan in the last year.
The geopolitical tensions in the region have had an impact on global economies. The conflict in Gaza has created instability in the region and Egypt has been affected. Businesses look for stable economies or regions to invest in. The regional developments have kept investors thinking twice before pumping money.
Egypt's finance minister, Mohammed Maït, expects sales worth $6.5 billion this year, down from an initial $10 billion target. The state-owned entities will either be sold to a direct strategic investor or through a stake sale in partnership with the government, or alternately will be released in the stock market.
To accelerate the process is not easy. The government has released the products in the market, but demand is low due to these unusual circumstances. Officials must be patient to get a fair price, because if they are in a hurry to sell, then they will be forced to accept lower value for the companies, and especially now that the investors are reluctant to tap into the market.
Government officials say they expect to close deals in the military-owned fuel station chain Wataniya and water bottling company Safi, as well as a wind farm and a Siemens-built power plant before the end of June.
Foreign ministers from the G20 group of nations are meeting in Brazil with poverty, the climate crisis and heightened global tensions, Israel's attack on the Gaza Strip and the Russia-Ukraine war taking center stage on the agenda. The meeting is to prepare the agenda for a G20 summit in November. Hamman Jabani reports.
In addition to foreign ministers and representatives of 19 countries that make up the G20 plus the African Union and the European Union, authorities from the countries invited by the Brazilian presidency and representatives of the 12 international organizations are attending the meeting. Brazilian President Luiz Lula da Silva, who pushed the international community to unite in a peace bloc to resolve the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza, took the rotating presidency of the G20 from India in December 2023. In addition, Lula has been critical of the current state of global governance and institutions for failing to prevent armed conflict worldwide. The attendance of the representatives of the US, Russia and China underscores the relevance of the diplomatic event in the face of global tension. The summit is set to push for reform in key institutions such as the UN, World Bank, World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken praised Brazil as a key partner for global peace and security issues. The G20 is the premier forum for economic cooperation. It plays a critical role in steering the global economy through major shared challenges. Its members represent 85% of the global GDP, 75% of international trade, and 2/3 of the world's population. Hamman Jabani, NTAi News.
Still on the international scene, head of the United Nations peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic, MINUSCA, has urged greater support for the country's efforts to build a professional national army. This is part of a security overhaul which stems from the proliferation of deadly illicit weapons. Comfort Fashion has more.
While briefing ambassadors on the UN Security Council, the special representatives for the Central African Republic, Valentine Rugwabiza, recalled the January 15th explosion which targeted a patrol from the mission, killing one peacekeeper and wounding 5 others. She maintained that the explosive ordnance devices, EODs, and light weapons are not only a threat to the population and peacekeepers, but equally the most serious constraint to the delivery of humanitarian assistance in the western region, where 50% of the Central African Republic population lives.
This approach should include investing in situational awareness, as well as focus cross-border cooperation on the origins and sources of supply of these weapons. Furthermore, the multidimensional response should entail enhanced pre-deployment, troops preparedness, adequate training and equipment of contingents deployed, as well as capacity building of the national defense and security forces, and further promote communities' awareness and sensitization on this threat.
She asked the Security Council for urgent, dedicated and truly multi-dimensional response to the threat by strengthening situational awareness, greater cross-border cooperation and adequate training for the blue helmets as well as police prior to their deployment. She added that MINUSCA will continue to cooperate closely and hold joint patrols with the Central African Republic security forces, particularly in border areas and conflict hotspots. Ms. Rugwabiza stressed the need to do the utmost to prevent the spread of these lethal weapons from finding their way to other regions of the Central African Republic. Comforts Fashion, NTAi News.
Somalia's executive and legislative branches have approached a crucial 10-year defense and economic cooperation agreement with Turkey. President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud announced this in a meeting in Mogadishu. Again, Comfort Fashion has details.
Following a meeting in Mogadishu, Somalia's cabinet approved the Defense and Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement. Shortly after the cabinet's approval, the two houses of Somalia's parliament voted to endorse the pact in a 213-3 votes. While addressing members of the cabinet, Somali Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre said Turkey will build, train and equip the Somali Navy under the agreement. He added that the agreement will help remove any fears of terrorism, piracy, illegal fishing, toxic dumping, and any external violations or threats to Somalia's sea coast. President Mahmoud also noted that Turkey is already helping Somalia with humanitarian assistance, budgetary support, and the training of security forces. He described Turkey as a true and reliable brother. Somalia is a country in the Horn of Africa with the longest coastline. Comforts, Fashion, NTAi News.
Senate has confirmed the appointments of Olayemi Kadoso as chairman and 11 others as members of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria. The confirmation, as requested by President Bola Tinubu and in accordance with constitutional provisions, has membership of the committee drawn from the CBN, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Ministry of Finance, including economic and financial experts. Lawmakers say Nigerians expect the members of the committee to immediately redirect monetary policies that would get the country out of the current economic challenge for the good of citizens. The other members of the Monetary Policy Committee confirmed by the Senate are Muhammad Abdullahi, Bala Bello, Usoro, Philip Okeazo, and Lamido Yuguda. Also confirmed are Jafia Shehu, Murtala Sagagi, Aloysius Uche, Pauline Odinke Melu, Mustafa Akinwumi, and Bandele Amao. Meanwhile, Senate has, in concurrence with the House of Representatives, passed the bill that seeks to establish the Southeast Development Commission for the rehabilitation and reconstruction of the zone suffered as a result of the civil war and to address other environmental challenges in the region. If you just joined us, this is the news on NTAi International. Let's take a short break. The news continues shortly. Thank you for staying with us on the news on NTAi International. Newly appointed heads of a Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria and that of the Federal Housing Authority have been charged to demonstrate capacity with innovations that will bring to bear President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's determination of providing quality and affordable shelter for Nigerians. Minister of Housing handed down the charge at a meeting with new appointees in Abuja. Francis Udojo has the details.
The Nigerian National Pledge serves as a reminder to the two leading housing agencies, the FMBN and the FHA, now expected to break new grounds. Disappointed with FHA's delivery of only 50,000 houses in its 50 years of existence, much is expected from the new leadership.
For FMBN, we expect you to meet and exceed the targets of your action plan, and I know you can. The delivery of at least 5,000 new homes annually, with a significant portion of this through the New Hope Cities and Estates program, disbursement of mortgage loan to at least 20,000 Nigerians annually, and this will mean quicker turnaround time and more efficient customer service.
Statistics show that FMBN between 1992 to 2023 had only delivered a meager 38,756 houses, which means over a 31-year time frame, it was doing a yearly average of 1,250 housing delivery, disbursing a total of 426 billion naira in mortgage loans and created about 24,629 mortgage loans, a narrative the Minister of Housing says must be improved with speed.
I expect a strong participation of FMBN in this team, as it is expected to outline frameworks for synergy between the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, FMBN and FHA, and even Family Homes Fund, and propose processes to eliminate all bottlenecks in housing development to increase the national housing stock, among others.
These past 3 days, we have been familiarizing ourselves with the structures and the operations of the bank and noting critical areas of intervention so that we can hit the ground running.
The Minister of Housing, Ahmed Musa Dangewa, therefore, reminded the leading housing agencies' leaderships to ensure positive results and put the country's interests first over personal gains. In Abuja, Francis Sudojo, NTAi News.
In other news, the forthcoming African Summit on Disabilities, billed to hold in Nigeria, will be an opportunity to show the world the progress Nigeria has made in advancing the cause of persons living with disabilities. This was the thrust of conversations when officials of the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities visited the Director General of the Technical Aid Corps in Abuja. Kevin NTAi reports.
The discussion centered on the importance of mainstreaming and inclusion of persons with disabilities in the programs and activities of the Nigerian Technical Aid Corps as a strength in the establishment act of the Commission. Director General of the agency, Yusuf Buba Yakub, pledged the Corps' commitment to the requirements of the act. Specifically, he informed that DTAC, going forward, will enlighten all countries seeking the services of its volunteers of the need to include the requests for persons with disabilities while forwarding such communications to the agency, stressing that the agency will play its part in forthcoming African Summit on Disabilities as Nigeria is leading the way in the policy and programs of action bordering on disabilities inclusion.
The Technical Aid Corps, apart from persons with disability, we also give preference to our women. And there are still countries that don't have experts in mostly science subjects in terms of women. So when we send our ladies out there who are experts in the science subjects, they feel proud.
Executive Secretary of the Commission, James Lalu, sought concrete actions like setting aside 10% of the number of requested volunteers for persons with disabilities, and by so doing, engaging the services of such numerous skills and competencies like lecturers, medical doctors, nurses, among others, all of which are at the disposal of the Commission. In Abuja, Kevin NTAi, NTAi News.
And talking agriculture, northern states affected by land degradation are poised on learning how to use Delfino plow, a new degraded land restoration technique by the Food and Agriculture Organization for Agroclimatic Resilience in Semi-Arid Landscapes. Charles Salfa reports.
Northern Nigeria faces rapid desertification, which ranges from moderate to severe ecological pressure, occasioned by migration of human and livestock from frontline states. The resultant effects are degraded lands and loss of biodiversity, which the federal government, through the Agroclimatic in Semi-Arid Landscapes, the World Bank, as well as the Food and Agriculture Organization, are determined to restore. Participants from 19 affected northern states are being trained on new land restoration techniques using Delfino plow, believed to be potent and would drive the federal government's climate change agenda.
We are equipped ourselves with knowledge, skills, and strategy necessary to restore and preserve our precious landscape for generations unborn.
This objective will contribute directly also to the sustainable natural resources management and climate action.
Food and Agriculture Organization adopted and deployed the use of Delfino plow, and this has massively changed the landscape in the fringes of West Africa.
The trainers is expected to give a clear view of what landscape restoration in general and northern states in particular entails, and define the role of officials in land tenure status. Charles Alpha, NTAi News.
On digital level, Nigeria is set to achieve 70% in 2027 as well as 95% by the year 2030 in her national digital literacy level. The Director General, National Information Technology Development Agency, Kashifu Inua, stated this when the Director General of Voice of Nigeria, Malam Jibrin Babandache, and his management team paid him a visit at the agency's headquarters in Abuja. Chikunon Songwa Buezi reports.
As Nigeria continues to make appreciable inroad into the digital economy space, the need for our citizens to have access to and information on the use of digital devices and platforms safely and responsible becomes even more imperative. This visit by the Director General of Voice of Nigeria, Malam Jibril Babandache, and his team to the National Information Technology Development Agency, NTAi, is to fashion out ways of ensuring that many Nigerians are adequately informed on the importance of embracing the country's National Digital Literacy Program, as well as other initiatives of NTAi in line with the renewed hope agenda of the federal government.
We believe that these reforms under able leadership should be highlighted more, and propagated globally through creative programming. One thing about building narrative, like I said, we're in the age of noise and distraction, is that you will only be able to consistently tell your story beyond news.
Director General of NTAi, Kashifu Inua, while stating the agency's willingness to deepen collaboration with Voice of Nigeria, said if Nigeria can train between 1.5 and 2 million individuals on ICT, the country can generate about $50 billion annually.
Globally, there is going to be talent deficit, and most of the developed countries will have this talent deficit. But Nigeria, because of our young population, we can help position ourselves to become the talent net exporter.
The two agencies are equally setting up an interagency committee that will streamline other areas of partnership to enhance the realization of all the campaign promises of President Tinubu as defined in his 8 priority areas. Chukwunonso Nwapweze, NTN News.
Hundreds of youth and women in the FCT have been trained in basic cyber skills to help them make a sense of the present-day global realities and improve their economic base. An initiative of the Cyber School Ideas Technology Skills Scholarship Scheme, the program drew participants from across the FCT. Organizers, who commended government efforts at digital economy development, said it is now time for stakeholders in the sector to make digital skills available to those who need them to create employment. The scheme, which is expected to hold on a periodic basis, covers programs such as product design, data analysis, software engineering, among others.
Communication and Digital Economy, as well as the Ministry of Education. This program is an initiative from the Ministry of Education through the IDS office in collaboration with the World Bank, and they have brought to us this program, the Cyber School Africa Skills Scholarship.
We want to export our talent. We have a lot of young people, vibrant digital natives. We want to get them trained.
All right, let's look at the weather prospect for Saturday. As the weather prospect for Friday tomorrow. And that concludes the news on NTAi International. Thank you for watching. I am Nolin Ebel Ami, and my sign language interpreter has been Tayo Ozoma. Thank you for watching.